Hey guys, Peter Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. It's been a while since I made more than off-the-cuff content about No Man's Sky, but given how much I've been sucked back into it since the Worlds Part 1 update recently, it seemed about time to talk about it again more intentionally, so I'm going to give some brief review-like thoughts and then talk about how I'm getting the most out of this game as a pretty strictly solo player. I'm over 300 hours now, well past the main campaign, and it's been interesting to look and see how this game has developed. If you're not familiar with the basics of it, it's a survival exploration game in space with planet-sized planets and galaxy-sized galaxies. Procedurally generated is how that's pulled off. Moment to moment in the game, you are scanning materials and plants and creatures for reward money. You are extracting materials for crafting and fuel to continue your journey, and using what you make and what you fuel to travel to planet after planet, after building bases if you want along the way, and vehicles for faster or more in-depth exploration and extraction of materials on planets. And you're kind of, as a default goal, trying to make your way to the center of the galaxy. It starts very basic, focusing on core materials for survival and travel, but materials you can extract, find, buy, or refine become much more diverse before long. In the early hours of the game, during the first few years of release, it felt like there was so much to see and discover. But after about 40 to 60 hours, having finished the main campaign and reaching the center of the galaxy, I started seeing what I would call the puppeteer strings, or the code of the Matrix. In other words, the magic of the illusion of the theme was lost as I realized that it was an experience that really was a mile wide, but only an inch deep, as they say. In the fashion of the classic sci-fi that inspired it, planets were pretty simplistic once you landed on them. You've got your desert planet, your ice planets, your cold planets, your fire planets, your water planets. The whole planet is a single biome. It's the planet of this. And the creatures that you run into start repeating once you've been to about a dozen planets, or looking very similar after a short while. And since NPC interactions were very minimal at the start and basically just a bit of flavor text, it felt like I wasn't in a world that really reacted to me, that really felt fleshed out in the way that an RPG would, which is an unfair comparison. I'll come back to that in a second. But this aspect of the game was hugely improved over the many free updates released for the game. Now planets tend to have more easily findable caves or lakes. Even though they're not entirely different biomes, there's still some geological features that are a little bit more varied. A wider variety of buildings you can discover with different purposes that you can explore and then benefit from. At first, I got back into the game for at least 5 to 10 hours with the release of each update. That was kind of my pattern. An update comes out, and I'm in it for 5 to 10 more hours. But eventually, even the updates themselves felt an inch deep to me. I noticed that they often emphasized the addition of new things to look at or improvements to how things looked, which definitely look cool. I mean, that how they've upgraded the game visually has really been striking. There was an auditory overhaul at some point so that the crunchy sounds of your footfalls walking around. I mean, there's been so much more richness in the presentation that's just been added on over time, and that really is, part of the fun of the game, seeing that what bizarre creature or mineral structure or weird plant is on the next planet. So that is a significant selling point and creates a cool vibe that aids that sense of exploration. But despite those visual changes, the interactivity felt largely the same and non-reactive, at least not increasingly so. The addition of missions for various races and factions, allowing you to gain reputation with each of them, was a great improvement. Really enjoyed that in that sense of having a place, a standing in the societies, the cultures, or whatever of this fictional world. I really like that in RPGs, but it still falls short here of a role-playing kind of experience where factions and villagers are going to have different dialogues with you depending on how you behave in the world. Now, to be clear, No Man's Sky, not an RPG, doesn't claim to be. In fact, for a survival game, it is unusually rich in RPG-type elements. So it's important to kind of see that as a glass-half-full situation and not knock it for what it's, not setting out to be at the start. But one of those RPG-type elements that it does have fairly generously is story and lore, mostly found in journal entries and cryptic exchanges with the Atlas entity and other characters. It's so cryptic and vague at times that honestly I'm not very interested in it, except maybe on a philosophical level. The writing flirts with very philosophical issues, but in much more of an artsy way than a truly, I think, thoughtful, academic type of way, analytical kind of way. By that I mean that opportunities to truly and clearly state a worldview claim, a worldview position, are lost to the overriding choice of using vague and poetic language instead. And that's totally fine. It's a game and a presentation of a fictional world. But it occurs to me as I am seeing this in this game that sometimes we, in our conversations, will use vague or poetic language, and at a glance maybe it sounds deep and very thoughtful, but we really need to probe into what it is we're saying, what it is we're meaning, in order to evaluate the strength of the ideas that are being shared. So I really find that it's useful to ask ourselves, to ask our conversation partners when we're talking about the deeper things of life, what do you mean by that? That's interesting. What do you mean when you use the word blank, you know? So I'm just reminded of that as I see the writing style in this game kind of flirting with these deeper philosophical issues. In No Man's Sky, the mysterious Atlas entity seemingly wants obedience and worship, and seems to be central to the creation of this reality. So, in the minds of the writers, is the Atlas a device to share their speculations about the concept of God? Maybe, maybe not. Some races in the game think the Atlas should be worshipped, others do not, and the nature of the Atlas becomes a little more clear by the end. Without spoiling anything, I think the nature of the Atlas can serve as a springboard to think or talk about the nature of Yahweh, God as he is described in the Bible, and how he differs from the Atlas, and also differs from most casual armchair conceptions of God that people attack like a straw man, or that Christians wrestle with because they misunderstand some key truths about God revealed in Scripture. So keeping my thinking cap on, discerning and critically evaluating the stuff related to the Atlas in No Man's Sky has been very engaging for me, even though at the same time I find the presentation style of the story to be well outside the type I enjoy. Even so, the lore and the world has clearly been richly imagined, which is maybe why when I play No Man's Sky, I get a craving to take the story and role-playing elements further, to look for sort of in-world story motivations for things that I can do in the game world. The game does very little beyond its main quest lines, I think, to motivate gameplay with story. What I realized then was that I would need to take the story, or at least my character's story, further by employing some head-canon. To really get the most out of No Man's Sky, I had to figure out some gameplay goals to pursue that had some kind of light, self-generated story motive for my character. Goals that would also have gameplay associated with pursuing them that I would actually enjoy moment to moment. You know, I mean, why farm 1 billion nanites if the process is monotonous and there's nothing really worth buying for any purpose that you are pursuing? No, I want my headcanon goal to be conceptually novel, and for the journey to achieve it to be fun and engaging. So I put my head to work to determine some gameplay challenges that could possibly have a satisfying headcanon to go with them. For example, I decided to make defeating all waves of Sentinels a goal. Although space battles with Sentinel ships continue in these endless waves until you just decide to run away, those waves of Sentinel forces on a planet, when you're on foot, they will stop after you defeat a certain number of them, and those Sentinel types become increasingly powerful. So I decided to make it my goal to upgrade my exosuit and multi-tool enough that I could defeat an entire series of Sentinel attack waves, and that became sort of a final boss fight of the game for me. And the only accompanying headcanon motive I had for it was that my character does not want to be subjugated by the Sentinels anymore, and wants true freedom in this strange reality he's found himself in, true freedom to be the master of this strange domain wherever he finds himself. For that matter, I also made environmental survival capability a goal. And by the way, you can find various videos for maxed out exosuit builds online to give you a goal, a concrete goal to move towards if you want. So in a nutshell, a sort of win condition for me is to feel safe, comfortable, and in command no matter where I am or what creatures or sentinels I run into. And then once I started to feel like I was approaching that state, I introduced one of my current goals, which is to get to the center of a harsh galaxy. There are multiple galaxy types. You start in a normal one, you can go to a lush one, or to a more empty one, or to a harsh galaxy. And my goal was to get to the center of a harsh galaxy without using portal coordinates someone else has posted online to kind of jump me to close to the center. So it's sort of my New Game Plus version of the basic goal of the main quest line, but in a galaxy where planets will tend to be less hospitable and more dangerous. And this is, another sort of let's just see if I can do it type of quest without a lot of headcanon motive, but I'm also thinking that after accomplishing this, I'll use some portal shortcuts online to make my way intentionally to a lush galaxy, and then as kind of my reward for making it on my own steam to the center of a harsh galaxy, I'll find a beautiful, resource-rich planet and sort of retire, becoming, as my final step on my current save, a benefactor that can hand off a ton of resources to a new character that I create. Now, why create a new character? Because I just want to do the whole thing again? No, actually. The Atlas main story quest has been fleshed out and redone since I completed it back in the day, and you can only play that story once per save. So I want to make a new save to play the new version of that storyline, but I don't want to do all the work of survival and resource building that I've already done. Some of that is fine. It's part of what the game is, but I don't want to do all of it. So how do I skip or speed through that part? The answer, I think, is to use my original character serving as a retired benefactor. Now, how in the world am I going to pull that off? Well, the plan is based on the fact that we've got a PS4 in my house and a PS5 in our house, and so my plan is to give a ton of stuff to my son's PS4 character, who will then pass it all on to a new PS5 character I create, jump-starting his progress through the Atlas story path. And if you didn't know, by the way, you don't need PlayStation Plus to play this game online, to see other people's bases and stuff they've created, to play with other players. You don't need PlayStation Plus. I've tested this with my son. But anyway, that whole transfer of resources is still quite a ways off. The journey in my current harsh galaxy to the center is going to be long. How can I motivate myself in the meantime and keep things interesting? Well, the game has a minimal reputation system, as I mentioned earlier. When you reach a certain tier of what's called standing with each race or faction, you'll experience certain benefits. Higher reward missions will unlock at mission vendors of space stations, and you can get some useful but, mundane gifts from envoys of different factions also at space stations. But so what? Just seeing a reputation number go up and a certain title be achieved doesn't significantly change my experience of the world. There's no cutscene when you achieve these things, no in-game rewards or no in-game revelations. NPCs don't really treat you differently. It's not much more than seeing some numbers and words change in your menu. How is that appealing? So, to give it some appeal, I'm creating specific goals with specific headcanon. The standing system has these named tiers that are reached by achieving certain standing number thresholds. At a standing value of 100, you reach the final threshold, the max named tier in standing possible. Although there does not seem to be a max number value, that keeps going up for some reason. So I decided to make it my goal to reach the max named tier in standing, with a minimum of 100 points in standing with every race and faction at the same time. That's a minor balancing act because some missions, such as with the Outlaw faction, can cause you to lose points with other factions, but I'm getting closer and it seems very doable. I also want to learn all of the words of every race language. In my headcanon, this will basically amount to winning the game with a happy ending. I'm going to be honored and valued by every NPC because of my standing, a bit like how the hero is treated after defeating the big bad in many other games. And I'll also know all of their languages, which to me will represent truly integrating with their societies, being one of them, and truly making my home in this strange universe. A happy ending, right? However, The final step before my retirement will be a great betrayal. That's right, after achieving all of this, it will be my goal to, as quickly and harshly as possible, reduce my standing with every race and faction to 0. I suspect the fastest way to do that, which also has its own fun, will be to pillage and destroy freighters and fleets associated with the different races. Factions will be more boring to reduce standing in them, as I think faction standing only lowers when you accept and then abandon a mission. I'm not sure about that, but that's the only route I see at the moment. Honestly, I don't even know if this idea is something I'm going to see through, but the idea of at least giving it a try and seeing how far I can find interest in it is motivating for me for now. Finally, to give myself motivation for base building, not something I've done a ton of, but to give myself some motivation for that and a reason to pursue some of the impractical cosmetic elements that haven't interested me before now, I decided to start creating a quest line that other players could go on. I'm kind of surprised to not be finding much of anything like this in the No Man's Sky community. I would think there's plenty of other creative folks that would see an opportunity here that they could take advantage of. If this sort of thing is happening, you'll have to tell me where, because I'm not using the right search terms, evidently, to find it happening. But the idea is to create a series of bases players can find by following clues that lead to portal glyph addresses and planetary coordinates in some cases. In-game messages that you can leave for other players to read, they have to be very short. So I'm planning to make some videos that I can point to in-game by leaving short, easy-to-input URLs for players to find. And then those videos will represent the more extended logs and give me greater capacity to tell story with using logs of characters that you're discovering, whose story can sort of be followed by visiting the series of bases that I'm building for that purpose. And this little project has given me motivation to build numerous small bases that represent the outposts left behind by this character, whose journey we are able to follow through the logs that they leave behind. So I'll let you guys know when the quest line is ready. I've got the bases built, and I just have to start doing the connective tissue and some writing and some recording, because I'll be bringing some of my acting background into it to hopefully make it a little bit interesting. But anyway, in the meantime, it's certainly given me motive to pursue blueprints for purely cosmetic-based objects that I would normally have no interest in. So that's been kind of cool. Something, if you're a creative type, that you could consider yourself or your friends to enjoy. When I step back now and look at No Man's Sky, look at all these goals I've created and how they've really created incentive for me, it's really cool. There's incentive for various types of gameplay that I have as a result of coming up with these minor headcanon things and goals for myself. You know, upgrading my exosuit and multi-tool to take on Sentinels, it's a whole thing to, maximize the upgrades of your exosuit and multi-tool. Upgrading my ship, I've got a reason to do that, to upgrade my ship, or getting a new ship to endure the rigors of black hole travel. There's only 2 ship types that can do that without risk of damage. And so that's a reason to get a new ship, or to be ready to repair your ship, all those kinds of things, or to upgrade your ship. And then also to upgrade my ship to more easily and quickly destroy freighters and fleets when I'm ready, because I'll want that process to go as smoothly and quickly as possible. I'm just going to want to be able to melt through fleets with my ship. So that's definitely incentive to max upgrade the offensive, defensive capabilities of my ship. And on top of all that, I'm starting to think about, okay, storing and collecting materials in basically a base warehouse, and I'm going to make a base that's its sole function is to be a warehouse of stuff that I can use to just what I would want to give to a brand new player to be able to just blaze through all the story mission stuff as quickly as possible, So yeah, I'm having a good time having these various goals, and it's keeping me interested so far. Maybe there's a little bit of a dip lately, but just a minor one. I think I'm still going to be maining this game quite a bit. I'm thinking at this point I'll definitely be done with No Man's Sky once that handoff has happened and my new character completes that newer version of the Atlas Path questline. But at the same time, Hello Games might have added some things by then that I wouldn't expect right now that will give me new reasons to get sucked back in. Either way, although for years it only pulled me in for short bursts at a time after finishing the main quest, short bursts that I greatly enjoyed, but still, shorter bursts, At this point, No Man's Sky is the place where I'm finding more fun to be had for a greater length of time than ever before. For years, I have counted it as one of my all-time favorite games, but never has that labeling been more solid in my mind than right now. And if you're interested in checking out one of the bases I made one for Christian Geek Central. There's an instant, easy 6 million units you can grab by checking it out. I've grown a bunch of nip buds that you can pick up and then sell right there on the base without risking being attacked by sentinels. It's because they're illegal goods that they're worth so much. Just follow the portal coordinates that I'm dropping in the video version of this, and I'll try to put them in the thumbnail of the podcast as well. You should be able to check the CGC base pretty easily after emerging from the portal address that I provide. Feel free to leave me a message or even build another base nearby. But that about sums up what I'm doing in No Man's Sky to get the most out of it, and why in 2024 more than ever, it is one of my all-time favorite games.